The 2015 Forest Lake Veterans Day ceremony is proudly sponsored by Matson Funeral Home. Matson's was nationally recognized in 2009 as a top 5 funeral home in the country and has been in business for 95 years. Owned by licensed funeral directors, this Forest Lake Funeral Home is dedicated to providing excellent and compassionate care for those who serve. Matson Funeral Home thanks all veterans for their service and sacrifice.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Ron Miller. I'm the chaplain here at the Forest Lake American Legion Post 225, and here we are on this Veterans Day. We thank you for coming. And the first thing we're going to do is posting of the colors. So if everyone would rise, and the flags are back there, so you turn towards them, and as they move, you move. So you keep facing the colors until they post in the front, and we'll go from there then. Color guard, post colors.
Column left. Mark time. Detail. Oh. Right. Post. Color. Present. Two. Left. Forward. Column left.
We'll have the opening prayer now. If you'd please uncover and bow your heads. O Lord our God, we give you thanks for your presence with us. We know that you are always there, ready, willing, and able. We thank you for that, and we ask you use special blessings upon us so that we are ready, willing, and able. And we ask that you would take care of those who are not here today. Maybe there are some who are still driving in the weather. Maybe there are some that are hurting who can't make it here tonight. So we ask that you would touch them and care for them and bless them also. And we ask that you would enjoy this time together with us, and we would get closer to you. In your name I pray. Amen. I want to point out the POW table over here. It's a tradition that basically from the Vietnam War era, prisoner of war, missing in action. And so we have a table set up here in remembrance of those who could not be here this evening.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
You see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Welcome to our Veterans Day program. Welcome, distinguished guests. I'm going to introduce our head table. Ron Miller, he's the chaplain for the American Legion. And Chaplain Major Philip Wynn with the Minnesota National Guard is our speaker tonight. We've also got many special guests out there. Bob Detmer, State Representative. Mayor Steve Stegner. Mike Freer and Rich Weber, they're on the City Council. Karen Moorhead from the school board. Okay, and I have some more people here. The VFW, the commander, Roger Fredstall. There's Roger. And Dave Rovang, he's the chaplain. Where's Dave? Oh, Dave's not here? Okay. And then our American Legion family, Kathy Dunaway, she's the president. And Ron Weiss is the commander for the SAL. Where's Ron? Okay. And I want to let it be known that the Matson Funeral Home is hosting our dinner tonight. And the pavers are donated by Robert's Funeral Home. So please, everybody, enjoy the service tonight and your dinner afterwards. And I hope you have a good time. Thanks.
Chaplain Wynn is a chaplain in the Army National Guard. And you can read his bio is in the program, the long part of the bio. Part of the reason that I chose him and asked him to do this task, my son Tim was deployed with him. Tim is back there by Joanne, and he said yes, he's a great speaker and whatever. So afterwards, no, I'm just kidding. Tim is ducking now. But no, he was a chaplain when Tim was in Kuwait at that same time period when you see that in 2011 and 2012. So we got to know Chaplain Wynn pretty well. And then there's someone near and dear to our heart as a Legion family, and that's Jenny Rich. At her funeral service, Chaplain Wynn was there. There was another chaplain from the Army National, or actually Air Guard, because Jenny's husband, John, is Air Guard. So anyway, there's another chaplain doing the actual funeral service for Jenny, but I saw Chaplain Buddy Wynn there, and we sat next to each other and chit-chatted and whatever, and so I thought, yes, I'm going to ask him, and then I asked Tim to kind of verify it, and he said, yes, go for it. And so Chaplain Wynn, he has been a busy guy. Today, he started off at a school that his wife teaches at, and then he went to the Governor's Veterans Day event in Inver Grove, and then he went to an assisted living place. It kind of sounds like us as a color guard. I mean, we started off at Central Junior High. We went to Forest Lake High School today. We went to Applebee's for a free meal, and then we went to Fairview Meadows Assisted Living, Birchwood Nursing Home, and then the assisted living over in Birchwood Arbors. So anyway, with that little bit aside in there, we were really glad to have you, and we know you're busy, but thank you so much for coming, Buddy Wynn, Chaplain Wynn.
Good evening, everyone. As the chaplain mentioned, I went to an assisted living facility in St. Paul, and the person who preceded me in the pulpit with the microphone was taking a lot of flack because the audience couldn't hear very well. So I got up and I said, I spent 18 years in the field artillery, so it probably won't be a problem to project because I lost a little bit of my hearing in my military experience as well. So State Representative Detmer, Mayor, City Council members, Commander and Chaplain, to the staff and volunteers here this evening. And also I want to mention Command Chief Warrant Officer Kip Knutson, who is with me on the staff for the Adjutant General of the State of Minnesota, the Minnesota National Guard. Good evening. It is a great honor for me to participate in this celebration today. One thing that the chaplain didn't mention was that when I deployed to Iraq, I had the privilege of deploying as the chaplain for the unit that he commanded in the Minnesota National Guard, 2nd of the 147th Aviation Battalion. So that's another connection that we had. And of course, as he mentioned, I want to say hello to my very good friend, Tim Miller, your son. Tim, my fellow warrior, we deployed together and served on the same staff. So it's a real neat opportunity to be here and just to share some thoughts with you tonight. There's 3 rules for public speaking: be brief, be smart, and be gone. So I hope to do that here tonight. Our military and the history and the legacy of our veterans is a living historical community. And those of us that are serving today are determined to preserve the legacy of courageous, selfless service that we've inherited from the veterans who have gone before us. Now, you want to keep in mind the years, this year, last year, next year, and the year to follow puts us in the anniversary, the 100th anniversary, the beginning of the Great War. We celebrate on this day because in the 11th hour of the 11th month, on the 11th day in 1918, World War I ended. And although a lot has changed in the character of armed conflict since the early 20th century, there are also clear continuities in the nature of war, as well as the character and commitment and ethos of those who have served in the armed forces. For those in our audience tonight, including our gifted singer, thank you so much, Al, for your singing tonight, leading us. For the greatest generation, World War II involved all of America. The United States Army grew from 190,000 before the war to an army of almost 8.5 million at its height. And that was a 44-fold increase. A total of 16 million Americans served in uniform in World War II. So virtually every family in this nation had someone in harm's way. Every American had an emotional investment in our armed forces. There's a historian by the name of Rick Atkinson, and he observed that the wars of the 20th century also teach us that victory in war is only possible through sacrifice. Now, I'm a Generation X guy. I'm not Generation Y like my kids, millennials. But it was a very striking occurrence to me for those of us that have served in uniform, continue to serve in uniform. While we were deployed overseas, there was a great quote by, I believe it was a Marine, when told that America was at war. The Marine responded that, no, America's at the mall. The Marines are at war. So the concept of sacrifice is not as known to my generation or my children's generation as it was to the greatest generation. In World War II alone, the United States military sustained 300,000 or more battle deaths and about 100,000 more deaths from injury or illness or disease. The war lasted 2,174 days. It claimed thousands and thousands of lives every month, every hour, every minute. Here's what's great about those who have served in uniform. I think it's summarized by the novelist C.S. Lewis. He said, all that we fear from all kinds of adversity is collected together in the life of the soldier on active service. Like sickness, it threatens pain and death. Like poverty, it threatens ill lodging, cold and heat extremes, thirst and hunger. Like slavery, it threatens toil, humiliation, injustice, and arbitrary rule. And like exile, it separates you from all those and all the things that you love. Now, most veterans, whether they've experienced a field training exercise or intense combat, we can all think back to distinct memories of poor lodging, terrible chow. In the Army anyway, terrible coffee. I don't know about the Air Force, but in the Army, really bad coffee. I've got a lot of those memories. And it goes part and parcel with military service, and it's why we hold veterans in such high esteem. It's what they've endured on behalf of others and on behalf of a cause. But then there are those who face pain and death so that others can be spared. Now, this is summarized not too long ago in 2 service members and a good friend when they bravely stopped a terrorist train attack aboard a train bound for Paris this summer. You remember this story. It was Airman First Class Spencer Stone. He was out with his battle buddy, Army Specialist Alec Scarlatos, and their friend Anthony Sadler. Now, they could have run from danger when a heavily armed gunman boarded the train. But instead, Specialist Scarlatos, no doubt inspired by a Minnesotan who on an airplane on September 11th said, "Let's roll." Let's go is what Scarlato said, as the men ran towards a future that could have immediately involved death or serious injury and harm, not just for them, but those that were on the train and other innocent people within the range. Now, the story is not remembered for the horrific tragedy that took place, but it was remembered for the heroism that followed. Even after enduring serious stab wounds that were inflicted as he disarmed the gunman, Airman Stone administered life-saving first aid to a passenger that was shot. This airman stopped a terrorist who was carrying 270 rounds of ammunition. But because of these actions of these brave young men, the death toll aboard that train was 0. President Obama praised these men as the very best of America. The Defense Secretary, Ashton Carter, called this incident an amazing story right out of a movie. Now, I'm a member of the American Legion Post up in Osseo, Minnesota. That's my home post. Thank you. Up in Osseo, good to see you. The American Legion is not surprised by the actions of these warriors, and we don't take anything away from the heroic actions of Spencer and Alec and Anthony. But America's military men and women risk life and limb every day so that we can be free. From Bunker Hill to Baghdad, there's always been a select group of Americans willing to fight and to possibly die for a cause greater than their self-preservation. Now, we set aside November 11th as a special day to honor and remember our veterans. That's why we're all here. But the actions of our veterans affects all of us every single day of the year. We should continuously endeavor to serve our veterans as well as they have served our nations. We must honor all of their families, not just with blue and gold star banners, which are amazing outreaches to those special people, but with compassionate hearts as well. PTSD, traumatic brain injury, and life-altering war wounds not only affect the veteran, but it affects their families, and it takes an enormous toll on the families as well. Sometimes all that's needed is a simple thank you, which is directed at the veteran or the family member for his or her sacrifice. In Minnesota, we've got the Beyond the Yellow Ribbon networks. I know Forest Lake has a tremendous history in the Beyond the Yellow Ribbon effort to care for veterans and their families. In Minnesota, we and what we do with the Beyond the Yellow Ribbon networks is second to none nationwide. In the Minnesota National Guard, which is really the driving force, back in 2008, when the National Defense Authorization Act changed the law, we started with a change to the law which required those that were coming home from combat to check in with their units at the 30 and the 60 and the 90-day mark. Previously, when you got home from war, and of course, this would be perhaps those who were the Gulf War veterans, they were told, go home. Don't do anything dumb. Don't drink and drive. Don't drop out of college. Don't kick your dog. Well, what did they do? They were drinking and driving, getting arrested. They were dropping out of college. Some were committing suicide and committing acts of violence. So the law was changed here in Minnesota. Remarkable what we did. And so in the National Guard, we get phone calls from all across the nation. Tell us how you do it. How is it that you provide this care through service organizations, through community groups, in the cities and the counties and businesses, the churches, the synagogues, and other civic groups? These organizations have held themselves to a high standard to ensure that families are not forgotten when the service members deploy, and that the service members are not forgotten when they come home. Part of the sacrifice that too often includes during the processing back home, it includes unemployment or underemployment. We know that companies should understand it's smart business to hire veterans. And when members of the Guard and Reserves and active duty deploy, it's America's business to ensure that their civilian careers don't suffer. We must not forget the needs of America's women veterans. There are more than 1.8 million women in America today who have worn the uniform. My grandmother and I've got an aunt who wore the uniform. Women are major contributors to our military readiness, and many have given their lives in the global war on terrorism and been highly decorated. The American Legion believes that the VA must adequately treat breast cancer, cervical cancer, as well as the trauma that may have resulted from domestic violence, sexual harassment, sexual assault. And it is tragic that the men and women who allow us to be safe in our homes are often without homes themselves when they shed their uniforms. Here's some statistics you may not be aware of. 1 in 4 of America's homeless population are veterans. 9 out of 10 of those were honorably discharged, and nearly half served during the Vietnam War. Too often, today's tattered citizen of the street was yesterday's toast of the town in a crisp uniform with rows of shining medals. This is hardly the thanks of a grateful nation. When I see someone who is clearly a veteran sitting at a traffic stop, they didn't just get up in the morning and decide, hey, I'm going to go be a homeless guy, and I'm going to hold up a sign and ask for money. I mean, this happens. It's a very slow slide. And fortunately, today, right now, members of Minnesota's congressional delegation are meeting with landlords, apartment building owners, and they're creating better opportunities for homeless veterans. As a chaplain, I get phone calls all the time, not just National Guard, Army Reserve members, but veterans who are without housing. And what's great is I can pick up the call and call my buddy Tony, who at one point was a homeless veteran himself. He works for MACV, which is a tremendously helpful resource. And Tony has never failed to help get those veterans into housing. So I'm grateful for their continued support to push back against homelessness. Now, fewer than 10% of Americans can claim the title of U.S. military veteran. This special group often provides the vital services that enable our communities to function. Chances are that if you were to survey the population of the local police or fire department, you would find that a disproportionately high number of its members are veterans. So when emergency hits, there's a good chance that a veteran is the first to respond. Whether it's a school teacher, a construction worker, a first responder, military veterans take their job very seriously. If you doubt me, I draw your attention to the color guard. I mean, they did everything they did tonight with precision and excellence because that's what they're all about. Veterans vote in higher percentages than non-veterans. They're more likely to volunteer in their communities, and they're less likely to live in poverty. So what I'm trying to say is that veterans make communities better. Born of their extraordinary accomplishments comes our extraordinary debt. And for those accomplishments and for their dedication, we must always be grateful. The American Legion National Commander is a gentleman by the name of Dale Barnett. He's been leading veterans awareness walks in communities across the country. This is what he said about that effort. We walk not for ourselves, but those who have marched for us. So whether it's a physical march or another gesture of appreciation, we must always remember that each veteran represents an oath taken that includes a willingness to die for their country if called upon. This is what President Lincoln characterized as the last full measure of devotion. So when we hear a politician rail about the high cost of veterans' benefits, present company excluded, it's up to us to remember to remind the critic about the high cost of being a veteran. This is a cost paid in blood, sweat, and sacrifice that has produced and protected the greatest nation on earth. I'd like to end with a quotation from George Washington's speech to Connecticut troops just before their enlistment ran out during the siege of Boston in 1775. I believe this is apt in connection with the service of our men and women today, as well as the relationship between them and our society in a time of war. And make no mistake, we are still a nation at war. General Washington said to these men, "Your exertions in the cause of freedom, guided by wisdom and animated by zeal and courage, have gained you the love and confidence of your grateful countrymen. And they look to you who are experienced veterans and trust that you will still be the guardians of America. More human glory and happiness may depend on your exertions than ever yet depended upon any sons of men. He that is a soldier in defense of such a cause needs not title. His post is a post of honor, and although not an emperor, yet he shall wear a crown of glory, and blessed will be his memory." Veterans here tonight, blessed will be your memory. I want to encourage every veteran in this room, regardless of your age, experience, component, length, term of service, rank. That's what I tell all veterans that I meet. I want to encourage you to take your experience as a veteran. Now, it's a great experience, but I want to encourage you to take that great experience and have it not be the greatest thing that you ever accomplish, your service to your nation, but have it to be the platform for the next great thing you're going to do in your journey here on earth. God bless you all for being here. God bless our veterans, the American Legion, and God bless America. Thank you.
God bless America. Land that I love, stand beside her and guide her through the night with a light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the ocean, white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
Even though I'm from the VFW, there are 9 congressionally chartered veterans groups operating in the state of Minnesota and the nation. And what I'm trying to say is, if you can afford to, join every one that you can afford to. The reason is, back in 1899, we had 2 armies coming back. The Army of the Philippines and the Spanish-American War. At that time, there was no VA benefits. There was no veterans' rights. There were no consulars. There was absolutely nothing. Well, all these veterans received their mustering out pay, whatever it was, $10, $15, and they were just told to go away. Well, the reason all these groups formed was these veterans said, hey, wait a minute. So what I'm saying is these groups formed to give us our rights. If it wasn't for these groups, we would not have a VA center as it is now. So keep track of what's going on with our National Congress and everything for veterans' rights and benefits. And if you see something you don't like, make sure your voice is heard. As I said again, I encourage you to join every group that you can afford to join because the numbers count. Thank you.
We will be dedicating this next batch of Forest Lake Veterans Memorial pavers. We do 2 different batches. We kind of have in the end of May, we end up with a time that we stop the orders. We take the orders in from the City Hall, so there's order blanks here, whatever, but anyway, the place that you put in an order is at the City Hall, and then they get it to me. I'm the chairman of the Forest Lake Veterans Memorial Committee, which you can see the members on there. Al is on there, and Mayor Stegner and Bob Detmer and a bunch of us, and also the park coordinator, Parks and Recreation coordinator, which is Jamie Mouchet up here. She's going to help me in a minute also. And so nonetheless, I take those orders and then I call each individual family and say, okay, before we engrave this, let's tell me more about the individual veteran, and let's get as much as we can and accurate on those granite pavers. And so we do those. This batch came back, and I'll get those in the ground as soon as I can. Now, last year there was snow in the ground, and it was slush, and it was whatever, and I didn't actually put them in the ground until probably April or so. Every other year, which is about 4 times, the 4 previous years, I was able to get them in the ground the next day or whatever. Well, now again, it's really wet. Thankfully, it's not frozen, but I'll get them in the ground as soon as I can. And of course, in the ground means at Lakeside Memorial Park, and right there by the U.S. flag and on the end of Broadway, on the east end of Broadway. So this first one is Mark S. Braun, B-R-A-U-N. So he is deceased, but are there any family members? If you wanted to stand or raise your hand or whatever, you can do that. And it says SP4, which means Specialist 4. He was in the Army. And 1971 until 1974, and he went to Germany. He was a mechanic. Okay. Next one is Robert Serisi. Any of his family here tonight? Good. Thank you. Is that Ray, right, his wife? Good. Good to meet you, Ray. And this one says Robert S. Serisi, Army, Specialist 4, And he was in from March of 1966 to 1969. And he also went to Germany. He was a field wireman. And he was in Prum, Germany, P-R-U umlaut M. Okay, thank you much. The next one is Jessie A. Eliason. And all of these are listed in your program, by the way, if you wanted to follow along or not. Anyway, Jessie A. Eliason, any family members here? And he was Army medical. He was enlisted. He was a private first class, and he was on a hospital train in Korea. His years of service was 1952 until 1954. And like I said, he went to Korea. So Jessie Eliason. Next one is Roger Haas. Haas, H-A-A-S family, anyone here? And, oh, thank you. Are you Linda or, okay. His daughter Linda is here. Army Staff Sergeant. He was in Europe. He was in the ordnance. He was a mechanic. World War II time frame, and actually after. So he's 1944, July of 44 until 47 in World War II. So he was in Italy and then also Germany. So Roger Haas. Next one is Elmer J Gert, and I know Tom Gert was here earlier. Tom is there in the back. That's Tom's father, Elmer. Army Sergeant in the Field Artillery. He was in the 45th Artillery of the 5th Division. And December of 1952 until 1955, and he went to Korea. It says Lloyd H. Hoole, Army, Tech 5, so technical technician level 5, so 1 being the lowest, or so 5, so like an E5. Signal branch. He was actually a cryptographic technician, and he worked at 902nd Signal Command Depot Aviation. And his service was from 1942 until 45, and he was in the Pacific area. So Lloyd Hoole. James Lawler Cook, K-O-C-H. And the Cook family here? Good. We have a flag case for you later for James, okay? James was a member of ours, and we give a flag case, so we'll give that to you later. It says Navy on the second row, and he was a fireman. He was on a repair ship most of the time in the Florida area, and he served from February of 1953 to October of 1956. So James Cook, thank you. Ralph J. O'Brien. Any of the O'Brien family? Thank you. Here. He was Army Specialist 3 from a anti-aircraft artillery battalion. It was Battery C, which is Charlie Battery 764th Anti-Aircraft Artillery. And he served from July 1954 until 1956. And one of the places was in Panama. He was 18 months down in U.S. Army South. So Ralph O'Brien, thank you for his service. Next one is Gerald Olson, Gerald M. Olson. And Steve, I know is here. Your mother isn't here? Okay, Steve is Gerald's son. And Gerald was Army. He was a sergeant, and he was in the Alpha Battery of the 21st Anti-Aircraft Artillery Automatic Weapons Battalion, self-propelled. Now, obviously, we didn't get all that on a paver. It says Sergeant A.A. A-R-T-Y, A-R-T-Y for artillery. But the other information, what I do is I put it in a book here. I brought the copies. It's an alphabetical order listing of every veteran's name that's on a paver, and we have 211 pavers that we've sold now so far. And there's a concept plan up here to show you what it's like and brochure, whatever. So anyway, Gerald Olson. Now the next one, speaking of Steve, we'll have him stand up again. Now this one, Steve obviously is alive. The previous guys are always honored, or were honored in memoriam. But these pavers for us guys that are alive too, like my paver. Al has a paver and whatever. So his says Specialist 4, Steve Olson, 82nd Airborne, and 82nd Airborne is out of Fort Brigade, Fort Bragg, is what I meant to say. He was in the 407th Supply and Services Battalion, and he served from 1975 to 1978, and he was in the Army. So thank you, Steve, for purchasing that paver. And you might know him from, I think it's called Cottage Barbers, right? In Forest Lake Barbershop. And his dad was the barber there before that, I believe, years ago. Okay. Now the next one is the large size ones. And this one was, it's for Patrick M Moline. Is Vicky his wife here, or any of the family? All right, good. And he was Army. He was a Specialist 4. He was in the 9th Infantry Division from August 1966 to 1968. He had time in Vietnam also. So Patrick M. Moline, thank you for honoring your father and husband. The next one is Lawrence H. Johnson. Is Nadine happen to be here? Okay, so Lawrence H. Johnson, he was a private first class, U.S. Army, 101st Airborne Division, and he spent some time in Fort Benning, Georgia, in addition to other places, and he was in service from 1951 until 1953, so during the Korean War, Lawrence Johnson. The next one is for Larry Petrie. And Larry Petrie, he is deceased. Darlene happened to be here, or any family members? P-E-T-R-E-Y. So Larry J. Petrie. He was in the Minnesota Army National Guard for many years. He started off as a private in June of 1958 as an anti-aircraft artillery crewman. He served until 1965. The place that he drilled is near and dear to my heart and Kip Knutson's heart and my son Tim's heart. It was Holman Field down in St. Paul, in your heart too. And so that was where he did most of his service. So that was Larry Petrie. The next one is for Edward Pitala, and he is alive. Is Patricia here or Edward? P-I-T-A-L-A. So Edward J. I think you pronounce it Pitala. And he was served in the Navy on the USS Seagull. And the USS Seagull, the number code, alphanumeric code for that ship was AMS 55. So Alpha Mike Sierra 55. It was a minesweeper. He spent some time in Cuba, and he was navigating that waters because he was a helmsman. He was made it to be Seaman Apprentice Second Class, and he served from February of 1951 until 1956, and that was during the Korean War time frame. So that was for the Pitala. O Lord our God, thank you for being with us. We pray for those who were mentioned tonight, whether it be those that have taken their lives or those that are, what I mean is those that are close to doing that. Stop them, Lord, we pray. And for the family members of those who have gone through that, we pray for them. And guide and direct them and show them your love. And may there be people and organizations in this country that will do the things that are necessary to make it so that that is not an everyday happening. We thank you, Lord, for all that you have done for us, though. And may you guide and direct this nation, and may the leaders turn towards you for your wisdom and your guidance. And may we come out of this even stronger than we were before. Amen.
Well, I want to say thank you for coming. I hope you guys enjoyed the program. Thanks, Ronnie. You did an awesome job again. I also want to say thank you to everybody for the preparation and for our kitchen staff. It takes a lot of time to put something like this together. I want you to enjoy the comradeship after this. We're going to have the dinner. I want to thank Matson's. They put together, or they provided the dinner. They're hosting the dinner. And I also want to thank Robert's Funeral Home for providing the pavers and that go down in the park. So this concludes our program for tonight. So go out and enjoy yourself.
The 2015 Forest Lake Veterans Day ceremony was proudly sponsored by Matson Funeral Home. Located on Forest Lake and owned by licensed funeral directors, the funeral home specializes in unique and personal life creations. Matson's is dedicated to providing excellent and compassionate care for those who serve, and they are honored to care for veterans' families in their time of need. Matson Funeral Home thanks all veterans for their service and sacrifice.